All right, good afternoon, everybody. Get chat started here. Hope everybody is having a great Sunday morning or afternoon now. Jump into your questions here in just a second as people come in. So before we get started, I want to remind everybody that we're having the Helen Meet and Drive in Helen, Georgia, June 6th through 8th. I will be hosting the event, so if you got a 944, come on out. There will be information that I'll put in the chat later on. But as for now, we've got a few people coming in. Good morning, Didier. How are you doing this Sunday? So as you can see, I got a new jacket. The customers came by and gave it to me. I appreciate that. It's a lovely retro Porsche jacket. Even has a rain hood on it. So I thought I'd wear it today. It'll look better when I've got my street clothes on, but thank you for that. John says the jacket is looking spiffy. Yeah, it's really nice. So what's everybody working on today? We just hit 10,000 subs on the YouTube channel, so I want to thank everybody for that. It has been a lot of fun making YouTube videos over the years. And I don't really have much time to do it anymore, but I do try to do these live streams now that I have a big shop and just kind of get together and talk about cars and stuff on a Sunday morning or afternoon, whatever time it is to you guys. John says it's been sunny and dry. Went for a drive. Yeah, it was really nice yesterday. Today's a little bit chilly though, but the sun is coming out, so I heard it's supposed to warm up, but it was warmer at this time yesterday. John says, congrats on 10,000. Well deserved. Thank you very much. I'm glad you enjoyed the videos over the years. I was just getting good at them too when I just don't have time to do them anymore though. And John Denning says, good afternoon. Well, good afternoon to you as well. Hopefully it'll be sunny and warm where everyone is today. Get out for a nice drive. So yeah, I'm just in here today finishing up a few things, trying to stay up. I've been having to work every day, just try and catch up on stuff. I got behind, but holding it together. We do have a new car in this week. It is a car that's been here before, but this time it's getting brakes done. It's a garnet red 85 and a half. Should be out soon. Shouldn't take us very long to get that done. And then we'll move on. We got seems like 2 cars go out, 3 cars come in type deal. I've hired somebody. So hopefully we can get a lot more done now. So we finally got the radiator for this red car back here, and it's all back together. I just got to start it up this week. And we're building an engine here behind me. It's going into an 87 944. So this is the garnet red car. This was a package I got from 944 Fest. Didn't have a place to put it, but it don't belong there. Get it off the car. They sent me a t-shirt because I'm a sponsor, and a lanyard with 944 on it. All this stuff you can get at 944 Fest, but I got something that you can't get at 944 Fest, and that is way back here in the corner. It is a cloth sponsor banner. So I want to thank them for that. Looks great on the wall. It's a lot bigger than it appears, but it's very hard to get back there to that corner and actually show you guys. But Didier says, any chance you'll post new videos of your restorations? I haven't been filming a lot lately. So a lot of this stuff that we're working on, I just haven't had time to even record anything on. I'll start something and I'll record for about 2 weeks on it, and then I forget all about it because it's got to go. Patreon guys know as well. There was a car that left a couple of days ago. I planned on doing a video on it and ended up leaving, and I just had to get it out of here. I was so caught up in other stuff that I just didn't have a chance to film it. But we did have another one that came in, so I filmed that one for them. And so, yeah, I start recording stuff, and then things go sideways, and then I just have to stop. I've got to figure out what else is going on around here. But eventually what I want to do is once I get enough guys in here and I've got a little time, then I want to get back to doing some videos, maybe a little something different, but we'll see. So the way the videos originally went was I laid out all the tools for everybody to do the jobs with, and you get like 50 views doing that stuff. And then I started doing longer format videos that were hours long, and it would show you pretty much everything that you needed to know during a job. And those did a little bit better. People wanted to sit and actually watch videos that were longer format. And then eventually it got to the point where people just wanted to yeah, that's the problem. So, but yeah, eventually people didn't want to see the how-to stuff. So I just cut it out of the video. It was, we're going to take the water pump off. Okay, we got the new water pump on type stuff. So I cut out all the how-to stuff since I'd covered it before. And those did better because people just want to get to the point. And then eventually I just ran out of time to edit videos. So it's figuring out what people want to watch type stuff. So eventually, I think I now have some stuff nailed down that would make better videos in the future. I just don't have the time to do it, unfortunately. But Alex G says, howdy, sir. Hat tips. Yeah, hat tip. Beautiful driving weather. It absolutely is. Yeah. It's going to be a beautiful day and warm here. John says, catastrophic engine failure on an 88 Turbo S, locked up suddenly. Oil filter looks like a glitter bomb. Still turns with a wrench, but very tight. Devastated. Now I have 2 cars with engine failure. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. That is terrible. I've not really heard too many stories of that happening with these cars. But anything's prone to happen. Someone had asked in the comments this week, they were talking to a mechanic, and they said that they were interested to see if the mechanic had any truth to it. And I'm sure it does. But the mechanic was telling him whether or not if you had like an electric pump to pump oil through before you started the engine, if that would help engines last longer. And it certainly would help, but you know, the oil being at the temperature would probably help a lot more. So oil does drain back and stuff. So would that help an engine last longer? But I think more critical than that would be to just make sure you do your oil changes on time. Um, I don't see a lot of sludge in these engines, luckily. So it's not very common that we come across engines with catastrophic failure caused by that. But we've seen some pretty heavily damaged engines like this red car behind me. And actually, the car was running and driving beautifully. You'd have never known anything was wrong with the car when you started it up and drove it. I didn't drive it on the street, so I wasn't trying to get into it. But yeah, you'd start it up and drive it. And the owner asked if he could get a turbo upgrade. So we sent the turbo off. But as we were tearing things apart, we took the crossover pipe off, and that got stuck. So we had to end up pulling the the headers off, and I think some of the studs broke off. And at that point, you might as well just take it to machine shop. So he took the head off, and it was at that point you could pretty much put your finger down between the pistons. They were, I don't know how it had compression. It was so bad that, I mean, it was all the way around on all four cylinders. You just scored so badly that you could see daylight around the cylinders. But that engine ran, the oil was clean. What was it from? Maybe too much boost? No idea. But who knows? But we ended up pulling the engine, getting it sleeved, and now it's back together now with some aftermarket pistons as well. John says, hoping to save the block, perhaps so we can rebuild. Yeah. Hopefully nothing went too bad. Jack says, do you have a place you recommend sending your turbo out to be rebuilt? So we send the turbos to, again, I'm not paid or in business with these people. So no affiliation to these people, but I send ours to Evergreen Turbo in Florida. Just to be clear with you guys that, you know, I'm not telling you something that I'm going to make money off of. Just, you know, that's just where we send ours. So the turbo that I like from them is I've tried a few of their turbos in different cars, but my personal favorite was just the trim turbo. I forget what he calls it. He has different ones, but just the one with the trim impeller. That's the one I like for my cars. Gives you a little bit better spool. But again, that's just personal. I just sent out 2 this week, and they're coming back. So once that's done, we'll have a new turbo for 2 of the turbos that we have here. Should be nice. One of these has not ran in a very long time. Not quite as long as the other one that was here since 1995 that just left a week or 2 ago. But it looks like it's been sitting since about 1995, but it's looking better now. If you guys could have seen it before, it was just covered in black oil, and now it looks like a really nice engine. And Jack says, thank you. No problem, Jack. So yeah, this engine here, when it came in, the belts were already off of it. I believe the water pump was already off of it, and the entire engine looked like There's just black tar on it. And this is the way it looks now. And then we got the new turbo coming in, and it'll sit right there. So hopefully we can get this back together soon. Right, so here we are with this S2 that came in last week. I was really hoping to have it back together this week because last week we found that the chain pad has been replaced. So I'm happy with that. We got the water pump in. They sent us the wrong water pump. So trying to figure out what to do with that. Send it back and wait another week for that to be fixed. But got to get a new water pump in here. We already have the oil cooler resealed. And then they sent us the wrong seals. So you got to be careful with these seals. Sometimes you'll get a 32 instead of a 30, and they don't fit the collars correctly, and you end up with leaks. So just watch for that. Some places call them flanges. Some places call them collars. I just call them whatever comes to mind when I'm thinking about it. But yeah, hope to have that out soon. We're going to put some new speakers in, a new radio, and new hood struts, and new brakes. Well, pads anyway. Jack asks, what do you recommend mainly looking at when buying an unknown engine? That's a good question. If you can borescope it, borescope it. The alusil in these engines is pretty strong, and you can go forever. But if someone's been not changing their oil regularly or running a K&N air filter, I don't recommend doing that. I've seen a lot of bore scratching with those things because you got to oil them pretty regularly for these cars, and I don't want to be that guy that's like, oh yeah, no. But I'm just saying that, like, in my experience, anytime we pull them cone filters off and we go down in the cylinders, that are always scuffed up and got a scratch somewhere in them. On a steel or a cast iron block or something, doesn't affect them because they're stronger. The walls themselves of the alusil, they're made of like almost as strong as diamond. So the rings won't wear them, but trash gets in there, then it just scuffs the aluminum, and the aluminum's very weak. So it's kind of embedded in this matrix. So that causes a problem a lot of times. When we did that restoration on that 84, had a cone filter on or a K&N on it, and cylinder 2 is wiped out. Is that always the case? Did that cause it? I don't know, but it seems to correlate, so just something to think about. We got another engine in here not too long ago. I was taking it apart and run the borescope down in it, and you could just see heavy scuffing on one side, and of course it had a K&N filter in it. So run the borescope down there to look for scratches the best you can, and if you've got one of those endoscopes that actually can turn into a hook, check out the valves. Honestly, we're talking about a 40-year-old engine at this point, the better part of 40 years old. I'd recommend just do the head on these cars. The head gaskets, if they're original, they leak. And guy called me up the other day, and if you watch my silver 944 video, way back in the day, we took the head off of it just because coolant was pouring out inside. There was no oil in the coolant, no coolant in the oil, but over time, the head gasket just starts leaking coolant to the outside, and that's a very common problem. So, what's the point? Take it off, clean up. It doesn't really cost anything. I'd recommend doing the head, and you're good for another 40 years, So take it apart, look for scratches. If the cylinders look good, they probably are good. It's not they're not known to really wear unless there's like some really big problem. So yeah, but I'd also, if you got it out, do the rod bearings. John Bow says you have an 87 red 87 at the moment, isn't an S. You know me and my S questions. So we have a red 87 here, but it is not an S. The only we did have an S here, but we don't currently have any S's here, just an S2, which is almost the same thing, but it's 3-liter. James Middleton asks, if you unhook the sunroof motor, can you operate the sunroof by pushing or pulling the rod to get it open? If you have an early car with the slide in it, there's a screw that you can turn and it will open and close the roof. But you don't have to disconnect the motor to do that. You can just turn that. I think it's got a 8mm or 10mm on it. You can just ratchet it open and closed. If you have the later one, I think you have to have it's like either a 13 or, well, no, that's for the nuts. It might be a 24, but I've never got a 24 down in there. There's a special tool in the trunk, I think, for both of those, but more than likely those are gone. Jack says, oh, really? I didn't know that. What can you recommend instead of the cone filter? I'd paper filter. Go with the paper filter. Is it going to take away your horsepower? No, it's not the way that works. Rich H, how long do the clutches typically last? My S2 has just under 130,000 miles. And I'm wondering when I should be thinking about replacing it. So what kills these clutches is I pulled a lot of rubber damper clutches out. What kills them is people just shifting hard and trying to do burnouts and stuff. So if you drive like a reasonable person, you may have your rubber centered clutch. Everybody tell you they rot out, and of course they rot out. They're rubber, but I've gotten plenty of cars that have perfectly fine clutches, and we go ahead and put the spring clutches in there because they're more durable, of course, especially at this age. But plenty of times we get the rubber centered clutches in here, and they're perfectly fine because somebody owned the car and took care of it. But well, I'll also get cars in here that had perfectly fine rubber centered clutches, and then 2 months later, after they're doing burnouts, their clutch blows. So they asked me, do I need a clutch job? And I'm like, no, it feels perfectly fine. And then they're doing burnouts in the parking lot, and then I got to do a clutch job for them. So yeah. Funny how that works. So it's not always, but a lot of times when you see these clutches and you've got to replace the clutch, it's probably had a hard life before you got the car. If your clutch still feels fine, don't worry about it. But hey, make plans within the next 5 years, maybe, and then do it at your leisure. I think like I said, my 88 has 130,000 miles on the bottom end. I don't have a record of that clutch ever being serviced. And that clutch is excellent. Will I need to change it one day? Maybe. We'll find out. But the story behind that car was that the woman bought it brand new. She traded in. This is from what I have records. Like I bought the car and it had a stack of records like that. She traded in her 87 Firebird for it. And she drove that car off the lot. And she had that car up until about 2014-ish, when the computer went out on it. And they sent the computer off to be fixed. And the new guy bought it and drove it for several years. They changed the belts on it, but the spring tensioner, and I had to explain this a few times, but when the spring tensioners, what some people call auto tensioners, when the nut comes off, which 90% of these nuts fall off the back of them, they're no longer calibrated. And what they'll do is they'll actually get tighter. So the spring, they're set at the factory to be calibrated. And when that nut falls off, now the spring can actually push the belt tighter. So it gets tighter rather than looser, which you might think. So anyway, makes the belt super tight. Now your water pump's going to fail. So that's what happened with this. It popped the pulley off the water pump due to the belt being too tight from just setting the auto tensioner, because the auto tensioner had a fault with it. So when that happened, I bought the car, and then that's it. You know, many hundreds of thousands of miles later, it's still on the same stock bottom end and the same clutch. But you can tell that someone tried to take care of the car, and it wasn't all beat up or beaten on. Well, yeah, I mean, Happy Fox says, how long does the clutch last? Okay, I'll say it varies wildly depending on one thing. And oh yeah, you can blow a spring clutch out, you know, if you blow the transmission as well, you know. That's like asking how long does the transmission last? Well, the transmission can last forever, but if you're downshifting and just popping the clutch out and engine braking, you'll probably break it within a few days, you know. But everybody else is still out there nearly 400,000 miles with a perfectly running transmission. So yeah, I mean, that goes with anything. So no problem, Rich. But yeah, the other part of that is that I have seen people strip the tabs straight off the clutch. You know, you have the limp home tabs. So basically there's some notches, and once the rubber breaks, you can still get home because they'll catch in these metal notches. And when you go to accelerate, they'll catch, and as long as you're driving, but as soon as you let off the gas, you'll feel the car kind of have this lash in the drive line. And that's the first sign that your clutch is going bad. But when that you keep driving on those, you can drive forever on them as long as you're not beating on the car. But I've seen people just still continue to do burnouts and all sorts of stuff until those tabs just completely strip off there. And if you watch my changing the clutch video, that's exactly what what happened to that one. The guy just kept doing burnouts and stripped it clean. John Bo says, my fuel pump can be heard in the cabin running at a constant low volume hum. It doesn't sound untoward, but wondering if this is normal. So two things could be happening here. Sometimes the fuel pumps just make noise. On a hot day, I'll hear mine. But what happens most of the time is that there are rubber bushings that hold the bracket that the fuel pump's on. And if I've seen it 100 times, especially with the later cars, people would just throw the fuel pump back in there and they won't put it on the bracket. They won't zip tie it to the bracket or, you know, or put the clamp around it or whatever. And they just throw it back there, and then it resonates off the side of the metal pan back there. And on the early cars, I've seen them just hanging there, and they'll touch the body sometimes. And when that pump, it's not a loud pump. If you hold it in your hand, it just kind of goes zzz. But you put that up against the body and you'll hear it. You know, so make sure it's not touching the body of your car. But on a hot day, it is not uncommon to really kind of hear the pump at all. When I was out in California, it was really loud, and I'd brought a spare pump because I was like, this thing's going to die. But here we are. I've probably driven that car another 75,000 miles after that, and it pumps just fine. Rich says, that's a great clutch video. Thanks. Happy Fox, if you close the windows and the engine sound should mask it out unless you have some insane performance pump. Yeah, well, when mine's loud in the car on a hot day and the bushings are there, oh, I can hear it with the radio. It gets pretty loud. You can have the windows up, the AC on, and you'll still hear that thing going zzz. But when it's up against the body, it is 10 times worse. It sounds like it's coming through a loudspeaker. John Bo says, my thoughts. I will be going up there to replace my hoses this year, adding that to the list. Oh, awesome. Yeah, definitely. If you're getting a loud fuel pump, then it's not necessarily a bad sign. For whatever reason, they just make a noise sometimes. You can get a brand new one on a hot day, and they'll still do that. Let me plug it in. I thought I sat down and plugged my laptop in, and I did not. Okay. Okay, we're back. Yeah, so I've even seen brand new pumps on a hot day make a weird noise, but 90% of the time, it's just people not putting the bushings back, and it's metal to metal touching that pump, and it makes a noise. And then I see pumps that never make a noise at all, and I can't tell you. Something's caught in it. Maybe on a hot day, the fuel's thin, and it's not lubricating the pump well. Don't know. Happy Fox says, mine is clamped down with the original ring rubber mount. Can't hear it unless I open the window. Yeah, you shouldn't hear them. That's the way it should be. But sometimes on a hot day you will. And that doesn't mean anything. Because it bothered me the first time. I thought, well, I guess my fuel pump's going out, and then never did. But I've just gotten used to hearing it on a hot day now. Jumbo says, you're right. Mine is all year round. Once I get it going, can't hear it. Yeah. Yeah, we probably see around 39 44s a year. Some you shouldn't hear them, but it happens. But I was prepared to have to change mine if I needed to. That's out there, but still going. And during the winter, never hear it. On the way to 944 Fest, can't hear it. Drive it in the summertime, randomly on a hot day, it'll be noisy. He said, I love the sound. I'd be worried if mine wasn't there with the one. Yeah, now when I'm driving, I can't hear it, even with the window down. But when it makes the noise, yeah, you can hear it with the radio. Windows up, radio on, doesn't matter. You'll hear it. It's almost that same sound that you hear when it's touching the body. And my turbo would do that all the time. I'd go to the track and it would just whine the whole time. And that was a brand new fuel pump. But again, once it cooled down, didn't have any problems. Because you got to think the fuel is going to the rail, probably getting warmed up, coming back, and it's probably thinning out or something, and just maybe isn't lubricating well, or just warm fuel doesn't lubricate well. Maybe that's it. It's probably, of course, wearing the fuel pump, but there's not a whole lot you can do about it unless you want to add cooling fins to the fuel tank or something. But Surely it's not that hot. I don't know why that is. It's just kind of odd. Maybe it's pressure in the tank on a hot day. I don't know. Never really looked into it, but I tend to not worry about it as much anymore since I know it's not something that's going to necessarily leave me stranded now. John says, I have another situation with those mounted bushings for my filter box. The bushing is gone, and I have not been able to undo it as there is nothing to grab onto. What year didn't you say you had a turbo? Someone was mentioning S's and S2s and a bunch of other stuff. So it's an 87S. Okay. Let's see. I'd get up and look. I have a airbox for S somewhere. I'm trying to remember the bushings that you're talking about. It should just be a lot of those, especially the turbos, they're just mounted to like a little bracket. They don't have a bushing on them. So I'm trying to think what bushing you could be thinking of. I know they break. I know those airboxes like to break. Right hand side is under the bracket. I'd have to look. Does it have the hex head bolt on it? Is that what's stripped out on it? Or are you talking about just the rubber that it sits on? It might be like a little rubber thing that it sits on. I haven't really paid that many. We don't get a lot of S's and S2s and 968s in here. I have all those air boxes sitting around, but I've never really taken a close look at them. Usually just take them out, put them right back on. But is it more like a grommet, or does it have a bolt running through it and that's what's stripped? See if I can grab one. Give me just a second. I would take you with me, but the laptop is running low on batteries. Okay. This is a 968, but I imagine it's probably close, right? This the one you're talking about? So the rubber is gone and TAACH to the body. So the rubber is gone and attached to the body of the car. Needs someone to weld a nut to it. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, sorry, I've not really seen that. I probably picked up that airbox and an S airbox 100 times, but I've never really. There's not a lot of them, so. If you were talking about the stock airbox or something, we know those very well. We know those inside and out. Well, they NA, I should say. Turbos too. Turbos always break. You can see here that even this 968 one is broken. So that's nice. Yeah, if you can get it off there. I know I've seen a few times where the heads of the bolts strip out. So I didn't know if that's what you're talking about. If it's something like that, you can just get a like a broken stud extractor and find the right size to go on the bolt, and it'll rip it right off there. And sometimes when you end up with those stripping out inside the cam housing, we have a Torx bit that we send down in there, and hammer that in there and get those out that way. But on an airbox, you could probably do it with the stud extractor. If it's external, it's easier with the stud extractors. Luckily, you say you tried it with no luck. I'm sorry to hear that, man. Can you get a Dremel in there? Or is it the one that's on the bottom? But like I was saying, luckily, we don't come across a lot of issues. There's head bolts that break, and there's always something that breaks, but especially studs on the turbos. But when we send the turbos off, we get those back with new studs, so not a big deal. That's why you send them to a professional. But around here, luckily, the worst thing that can happen is a broken water pump stud. Oh, absolutely. He said it's one of those things that is meant to be simple and you just spend ages on it. It's frustrating. Absolutely. As the old saying is, you're just one broken bolt away from a 20-minute job becoming a 3-day ordeal. That's that is exactly what happens. And with what we do, when that happens, sometimes I'm just like, you know what? I'll come back to that tomorrow. I can't do any more with it. Got to go move on to something else that's gonna cooperate. But yeah, I completely understand. You would think that an airbox bolt of all the things wouldn't let you down, but on the NAs, they're really bad about breaking off on the front. There's 2 bolts that sit on the bracket on the front of the car, and they love to just rust out and break off right there. And now you've got broken bolts in your airbox that's perfectly good. So I've got a lot of perfectly good airboxes that we can't use because they've got broken bolts in them. He says the rocker gasket was replaced a few weeks ago and it fought me all the way. Yeah. That's luckily, I will say that we're fortunate that it's very rare that we run into issues. Like the worst thing that happened to me the other day was I was putting a balance shaft on, and I just went through retapping every single one of those bolts. Now, when we took the engine apart, the bolts came out perfect. There was no issues with the block whatsoever. I even ran a tap down all the holes, which I always do because I know they're soft as wet cheese. So run that thing down in there, and it's still, I got to almost 14 foot-pound. I got to 13, and it just, time for a time cert. Got to take it all off. I had everything together. Had the 474 on there and every bolt in there ready to be torqued. I think you do the M6s first. So there's like 14 M6s. Did all those. Then I came back and I did that one, and I almost felt it pop. I was like, all right. And then I was like, something ain't right now. It's like, please tell me I just hit some dirt or something in there, Even though I tapped it out, there's no telling what went wrong. And it doesn't take very much, to get the 14 foot-pound. So you'd think if there was just that much thread in there, you could get it. But I had a long bolt, and that bolt was probably in that much thread, and it still did it. So, yeah, that's the way it goes with old cars. A lot of people ask me all the time, they're like, you don't use power tools? You don't just run things out? I'm like, no, these blocks are 40-year-old aluminum. That's a good way to be putting time certs all in your block. And yeah, it takes more time to do everything by hand, but at least you have more control over it, So we try to do everything by hand. And even when doing it by hand, and even when doing it all correctly, it still happens. Said the Hall sensor. So you got a nest. So you're talking about the one up there next to the cam sprocket. Yeah, those are not fun. Because when you got to take those out, I think you have to take pretty much the entire front end of the engine apart to get in there to it. They're always brittle. They're always broken. This car here only has 57,000 miles, so it still looks good. But every time an S comes in, it's always got broken wires or it's starting to fall apart on us. Let me go back up in there. I missed some comments. Rich 8 says, I was lucky I saw my fuel pump leaking in my garage while bleeding air out of the cooling system. Yeah, they'll leak from the body. I've even seen it where people on the later cars, they'll just take a straight piece of hose and they'll try and make that loop to save the $5 that it costs to buy the right one. And then it just kinks it up. And that'll also make noise. So if you got a later car, make sure you get that little U fuel line because the straight ones just kink, and then that'll also make your fuel pump starve, and the car may run fine, but the fuel pump will not work correctly and make all sorts of noise. So, oh, I know what I can show you guys before we get off here. So I usually try and do this for about an hour. We got about 10 minutes left. What did I do with that thing? I've got like 10 of them. I'll just take you guys with me. So what I was saying about the spring tensioner, someone had talked one time about how when the spring tensioner goes bad, let's see, I've got two of them sitting here, so let me choose the best one. Okay, I'll take this one. It's not really any better, but got a spring tensioner here, and someone was confused on how when they brake, they make everything tighter. So you can see there's a spring here. It's not a good spring. I got to replace the spring on this one. But basically this arm swings like this. And imagine there's a roller here. I have one with a roller, but anyway, this should do the point. So anyway, this is where your belt's tensioned at. And the spring is compressed right now, but you can imagine that when I let these bolts over here go, this is swing out and put pressure on it. So there is a nut right in there that goes on that threaded rod. And that's how they're set at the factory. And so once this is tightened down the proper amount and the spring is released, that's going to go in and it's going to stop at the set point. But as you can see, this nut is missing, and that's fairly common. Now this will just extend into oblivion and over tighten the belt. So that is how that happens. So a lot of people would think that the nut falls out and now the spring tensioner just doesn't work at all. But no, instead, it can no longer be stopped. It doesn't stop the spring from just pushing it completely out all the way. So that's how you end up with like a lot of these broken water pumps that I see. So when you're setting the belt, even with a auto tensioner like this, see if you got that nut. And even then, I recommend always using your belt tensioning tool just to make sure that it's set right, because this one will just, if it had a right spring in there, then it would just tension it to the moon and break your water pump. So there you go. Hopefully that explains that. But also, not to mention, you have to take those things off the car. So I prefer the early design better, because you just take the sprocket off and that's the end of it. But with those, they've got some blind screws in here, so you have to squish the spring in to get the belt on, and then you have to release the belt all the way to get this one in there. And it's not fun. Not fun getting these things on there. So give me the early belt tensioner any day of the week. And NC944 says, have you seen any related failures with the 968 hydraulic tensioners? I have not. We don't get a lot of 968, so I'll start with that. But I've never really heard of that. It kind of perfected it. So with these, of course, you know, they were meant to take the guesswork out of it, because a lot of the techs back then were just over tightening the belts. So they gave them the tool to keep that from happening. And I guess it still happened. So they were like, okay, we'll stop that. And then they came up with this contraption that was supposed to set the belt tension perfect every time. And when it works, they're really, really good. I like them when they work. Well, I don't like taking them off. I'd just rather not have it altogether. So this here, when it worked, is fantastic. But the problem is that none of them work right anymore. They still tension the belt, but they don't set the tension correctly anymore. I've seen maybe 3 out of 100. I've probably got 10 of them just laying around, and none of them are set right. All of the nuts are falling out of them, and that's just from everyday driving. So the 968 ones, I can actually show you one. It's on a car, but it sort of perfected that. But is there issues with it? Yeah. Again, any day of the week, just give me the early tensioner. But let's see if I can get in here. I don't even know if I can get in here and show you guys, but you can see it there. Maybe you can see it there. And it's got a little piston right here that pushes on this plate, and that adjusts the belt tension. And honestly, it doesn't really have to be anything special. I believe this applies dynamic tension to the belt, which is perfectly fine, because I've always said I've seen cars drive thousands of miles with a loose belt that was slapping the cover and everything. You don't want it that loose, but it's not really going to, as long as it's not loose enough to jump timing, it's not going to cause any problems. The problem comes with the belt being over tension. So in this case, I believe it's dynamic tension. And as long as it's not loose enough to slap, and it's not tight enough to break anything, then it should work perfectly fine. So never seen any issues with that, but I also don't see a lot of 968s. But I will say I've never heard of a 968 having those problems either. So, but I do like the design. I do like the idea behind the design. I don't really like the design. Just give me the old one. Just give me the old tensioner, and that would be the best thing to do, honestly. But I could see where they were going with that. They wanted to take the guesswork out of it, and some nice ideas there. But completely unnecessary, though. John says UNNC 944 should do a discussion panel. That would be a lot of fun. I would like to have him on the live stream one time, and maybe we just talk about that. I've never actually, other than in the chat here and like some YouTube comments, I never really talked to the guy, but I've seen his videos and they're fantastic. And I know everybody here has seen them as well. So that would be kind of fun if he's interested. I'm sure you guys know Elliot Grafton as well. NC944 says, make it. Well, we got to do it. I've been wanting to bring people in on the show. I had this beautiful studio and I just never had time. I was stuck in the shop 7 days a week. And so it's this beautiful studio overlooking the city. And I know this guy that's like really popular on Instagram. And I know this other guy that's like pretty famous in his own right, loves cars. And I'm like, I should get these guys in here and get 944 and Elliot from 944 Barn in here and maybe some other guys and do it. And I just never had the time to do it. So, maybe we'll just do live streams because I know it's difficult for some of the guys that I know are here in Charlotte, but some of the other guys I know that would probably be more difficult to come down and just spend like 2 hours on a live stream or something. But I would absolutely love to maybe we just do a live stream together and then people send in questions and we just kind of hang out and talk about stuff and whatever else. So that was actually the next move. So maybe what we do, you're up for it, drop into my DMs. You can just send me a message on YouTube and we'll try and figure something out. That'd be great. Love to get you guys in here and it'd make it a lot more fun, I think. Sometimes I'm sitting here, no idea where this is going. I just let the comments dictate. But it's always fun doing these live streams. I hope everybody else enjoys them, but I do believe it would be a lot more fun if we had like some other people in there. 10 years ago, I would call myself very savvy, technically wise, as far as the internet and everything goes. But today, I'm kind of a little bit out of the loop. I've been under cars too long. So setting all that up and making sure that everybody's in on here and can see what's going on and see us. And that is a bit of a stretch for me. I'm kind of, but I would figure it out. I mean, it probably wouldn't take me 2 seconds to Google it, but yeah, I definitely want to get some fresh faces in here and we just sit around and talk about cars and whatever else. It got a little warm in here, so I took the jacket off, but I want to thank him again for this. I don't always, you'll notice that I never call anybody by their names and I don't go, hey, like this is Johnny's car back here and something, because a lot of people, I don't know how they feel about that. So I would just say the customer or whatever. So I'm sure that there's some people that wouldn't really care if I said their name, but it's also, just something I don't put out there on their own. Because when I started doing this, I didn't necessarily tell the owners that I would be making YouTube videos on their car. I mean, they know it now. I mean, I don't think that there's still people that come, they find me on my website and come here and I have to tell them about the YouTube website. But it's very few and far between. I think most of the people know that they have found me through YouTube. So, but yeah, it would be fantastic to have some extra people on the show. And again, I want to thank him. I won't mention his name if he don't want to be mentioned, but he's a customer of mine and he brought me that awesome jacket. He also brought me a bunch of other stuff too. And I'll thank him for that as well. But yeah, I don't know where it'd be going with that. And it doesn't really matter where it goes. But it would be great to have some other people on the show. I think it'd bring in a lot of viewers. And maybe we get to see the cars live so they can walk around and show us their cars. And in the case of like Elliot, for instance, Elliot's probably got 45 944s out there in various conditions. So it would be absolutely awesome. But yeah, we'll get on that. I think that's a fantastic idea. And since NC944 is already here on Sundays, usually sometimes with us, I don't see him every week, but since he's here now, then maybe it'll be a great opportunity to I know that he might have the time already, so that would be great. We'll get him in here and we'll do that, and we'll have a we'll have some fun Sunday streamings, and I'll have to set up the rest for anybody else that wants to come on. But it could be a thing where that's what we do every week, because I just fly by the seat of my pants, and that's just the way I am. We just make things happen. I just make it up as I go along. But I think that would be an awesome way for the show to go. Alex G says, very much enjoyed it today. Always learning something new. Appreciate it. No problem. No problem. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Alex. I've had people say that when you first started doing it, I didn't know where you're going. It's like, well, like I said, I just fly by the seat of my pants and we just make it happen. So at first I knew I wasn't going to be any good at this, but the only way to do it is to do it. I didn't know how comfortable I'd be speaking live, because would I be so, but you just got to do it. You got to get comfortable and you just got to do it. So I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. Somebody brings something up, it comes to mind, then we talk about it, and we talk about something new every week, and we don't tend to get hung up on stuff. Like last week we were talking about oil, week before that we're talking about alarms and imbalance. We were talking about belts and all sorts of stuff. So it's always fun that we just kind of hop around. There's always something to talk about. In C944 says, I'd like to check out the shop and see where the magic. Well, absolutely, come on down. Just let me know. That'd be great. It's a mess right now. We have got bodywork in this corner, a car stuck right here doing brakes. Usually I try and keep it to 7 cars in here, but been overrun. So come on the day after we clean the shop. It'd be great. It'd be really fun. So I had to, then we got 4 engines being built here. So my wife comes in yesterday and she's like, how do you get around in here? And I'm like, it's not usually this bad. It's not usually this bad. But there's a giant car sitting in the way right here. It's kind of taking up the whole shop. So, and trust me, if I could, I would put another one in here just for the heck of it. But yeah, I have to limit myself. But definitely, that would be awesome. I look forward to meeting you. But anyway, guys, it's been about an hour, and if you don't have any more questions, we'll see about getting NC944 down here, and maybe we can get him on the show as well. So it'd be awesome to meet him. I don't know anything about him, never seen him other than his videos. So leave a thumbs up for that. And I'm going to get off here. Hope you guys enjoyed the live stream this week. I'm going to get back to work. And thank you all again for tuning in. It's always great to hang out with you. We'll see you next week.